So this actually polished up pretty nicely with just a Scotch-Brite pad. So it polished up pretty nicely, so I figured I'm not going to put any other finish on it. So now it's just a matter of getting all of this stuff off. So what I have is a piece of sandpaper, 100 grit, it's just what I had downstairs, in a little box just to keep, all the little shavings, because I'm doing this inside, and on a nice flat table. I didn't want to do it on this because any bumps are going to be uneven on this, the bridge, the underside. Then after I'm done with that, getting it down to just the wood, then I will put some sandpaper on the top of the guitar, protecting it a bit, and sort of, rubbing it, and that should help sand a little bit of the contour of the top onto the bottom of the bridge. So just to get, most of the stuff off, it's just pretty simple, just, you see big pieces are already flaking off, and I'll just sand it down to smooth wood, rosewood, I believe. And that's about it. So I'll be back when this is all done, because sanding is not that fun to watch. It took a while, but I sanded it down to wood, and what I did was I didn't use the top. Usually people will lay a piece of sandpaper on the top and sort of sand the bridge, and that keeps it, sort of arched a little bit like the top. But the top is pretty much dead flat. I checked it with a straight edge. It's pretty much dead flat. There's a little bit of lifting, I guess they call it bellying, whatever, right here. But I think that was because the bridge was lifting up, and once that started to lift, the pressure started sort of pulling this up a little bit. So at any rate, what I did was I sanded it, and I put a piece of cardboard down on the flat table, put a small ruler, where is it? I don't know where it is. See, that's what happens when you clean up. So anyway, I put a small ruler underneath it that is like one of those, it's wooden, but it has sort of like a beveled side on each end of it. So it's sort of like a trapezoid, looking at the end of the ruler. So it's a little curved with cardboard over it, and then the sandpaper over it. It wasn't, it sort of smoothed out the slightly sharp corners of the trapezoid, and I just sanded it, with the ruler in the middle, sanding it until I got down to the wood, because what was happening was the glue was coming up on the ends. This is actually slightly curved, so I wanted to preserve that. It's, like I said, it's like a $200 guitar, so I don't think it's such a huge issue. But anyway, I did that, and then I took a screwdriver and just scored a bunch of lines in it, and that'll just give the glue a little bit to grip onto. And there's plenty for it to grip onto here, all the torn up bits of the plywood. So I did that. Okay, then I put the bridge on, and I used 4, I figured, I have them, why not, sort of as registration pins, so that it goes exactly where it's supposed to go. Okay, and I noticed that if I press down on it, it's a really nice tight fit all around. So I did all of that. I got all my clamps that I've used in the past. I grabbed some Tight Bond, brand new, because I had some old Tight Bond, but I figured, for $2 for a bottle, I'll get a brand new one. I have wood blocks that I'm going to put underneath. I'll tape them to this just so that they stay on. so that way the wood block will give me some clearance over a couple of the braces that are in here, and then I'll be able to, clamp up the bridge. I have some really thick, very dense foam that I can use for the top. It'll help protect the top, and with the curves and stuff, a block, it doesn't really sit very well on the curves and everything. And I didn't want to press down and have the corners of the block pushing in to the rosewood. I know that, the bridge is a pretty solid piece of wood. It's not very soft wood. This is softer. So it would conform a little bit. But I figured, I'll cut up some squares of this. So I have everything ready to go, all good to go. And I did like a quick little test fit on this. And as far back as I can put the clamp towards the neck, as you can see, it still doesn't hit the bridge at all. And I have like 4 of these clamps. I've used them before on guitars. So I'm guessing that the neck and the sound hole are just maybe a little bit longer, a little bit closer to the bridge, because in the past I've used them and they've worked great, but obviously that doesn't work. I have 1 clamp that is actually the right size. So I used social media to put out a help, I need a couple of clamps to borrow, 2 or 3 or 4. 4 would be ideal, and I could do, 1, 2, 3, 4, and really kind of hold this down. Even 3, I think I could make work. So until I get some clamps, I'm kind of at a standstill. And the Talstop season, we have 1 more rehearsal on Sunday. See this ADD, I have, there's like a little sort of stuff that I'm wiping off. I think just sort of leftover gunk or whatever. But anyway, I'm getting way off track. Like, oh look, a squirrel. So anyway, until I get a couple of clamps, there's not a whole lot I can do. We have rehearsal Sunday. It's not a huge deal, because the way that the group is, the way that the orchestra, the band is, there's dozens of people playing. Well, not dozens. I think we have like 20 members. At any one rehearsal, there's like 15 or 16 or 18. So, there's definitely people playing all the parts. But it would be nice to have the 12-string. So I don't think I'm going to have it Sunday for the rehearsal. Then we have our first show the following weekend, so it's like a week and a half away. So hopefully I'll get a couple of clamps. If not, I'll just have to run to the hardware store and fork over, whatever it is, $20 or whatever for clamps. But if I really don't need them, I've never needed them that certain size before. Now, if I really don't need them, if I could just borrow them, that would be great. So anyway, right now we're at a standstill. So we'll be back. I went ahead. I had a few people that offered clamps, and none of them were really local within a town or two. So I figured by the time I go and borrow them, drive over there, use them, drive back to return them, and I can't just like return them like, hey, here you go, thanks a lot. I'd have to get them like a gift card to something, a little something. I figured by the time I did all of that, it's probably easy just to buy a couple clamps. So bought a couple clamps, 2 of these, and they ended up, got them at Harbor Freight, and with a couple coupons, the 2 clamps were like $8 or something. So I got a couple of clamps. So take the little labels off them. So what I'm going to do now is glue the bridge on, finally, a few days later. So I have a few things. I was going to tape the wooden block onto here so that I could put it under, but feeling around inside, the top here, there's all kinds of braces and, of course, the pins to sort of hold the bridge in the right position are sticking through the bottom. So when all is said and done, I'm really looking at all kinds of stuff in the way. So to do that, to glue it, and then to try to put the clamps in and get them situated and everything, I think it's easier to just stick the blocks with some tape, stick them right in a good position. A lot of the braces are at, like, 90-degree angles or whatever, so I can get the block right in there. Then it'll be much easier just to put the clamps in, make sure that they're on the block, somewhere, anywhere. Like, I mean, it could be clamped like there, 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 whatever. It'll be easier to position the clamps up here, which is where I really need to position them to get the best clamping pressure on the bridge. So what I mean by that is, let's just say that I open the clamps the whole way, okay, and I get them in there, and the block is taped in such a way that I can only get the clamp to like here. That's not so good, or like it's too far. I want the clamp right about there. So I figure it's much easier to tape the blocks underneath. So that's what I'm going to do right now. The block that's going to go right underneath these holes, I put some wax paper on because I'm sure some glue is going to drip down through those holes. And I don't want to glue the block to the inside, and now when I take everything off and the bridge is on correctly and everything's good to go, now I have to remove this from inside. So hopefully that will take care of it. So I'm going to do that right now, and I'm just going to take some tape and just make, one of those little loops. And if I reach underneath and find exactly where I want to put this, right about there, that should work. So all I need is really just to sort of hold it in place. Okay. The block is a little bit big, but you know what? I'm going to end up fidgeting the bridge anyway. I can see the outline of where it went. So I'm sure getting it, within like a fraction of a millimeter is going to be close enough. If the intonation is bad on the guitar, I can always adjust the bridge by angling where the string goes over the bridge, the plastic bridge piece. So I am doing this right now. So, make a little loop out of the tape. Okay, it doesn't have to be pretty at all. This is a nice smoother side. These are just leftover pieces from when we did Pinewood Derby, actually. So leftover blocks of wood that we used to spray paint Pinewood Derby cars. Okay, and the blocks are thick enough that they are clearing the braces. So if we take a look at the block, so the block is, I don't know, a little under an inch. The braces only go a little over halfway, so that's plenty of clearance to take care of getting past all the braces. So on this block, I'm going to put a couple pieces of tape. I'm just using painter's tape. Inside, it really doesn't have to be super pretty. It's not finished or anything, so we don't have to worry so much about tape that's going to lift off or whatever. This block is a little bigger, so I have to figure out a way to position that. Okay, so that blocks are in. They're sort of just dangling there, but that's all right, they're holding in place. So what I'm going to do now is put the pins back in the holders just to make sure that I have the right ones in the right spots. I'm not totally certain that it really matters that much, but whatever. Might as well do it the right way. So now I'm going to put some glue on. First I'm going to get a paper towel. Okay, I have a couple pieces of paper towel because I am going to use my finger to smear the glue around. And I left the glue over here. Okay, so I'm just using original Titebond. Okay, I'm wondering if I should put some on the top because there's some fibers that have sort of lifted up. No, I think I'm going to have enough of it on here. So, I'm putting it on. And I scratch this up so that the glue will really stick. Okay, I wonder if that's enough glue. I don't know. So I'm going to just smear it on. Yeah, I think that's plenty. Okay, and I'm going to smear outwards because if I smear inwards, I'm afraid I'll be rubbing a lot onto the sides of the bridge, and I don't really want to do that. Okay. So I made that a little bit smaller so that I could get all around the edging, and just as a little more glue is seeping out, I'm just kind of wiping it off. Not a huge issue. Okay, and then finding a clean side of this, just kind of wiping the whole top, because the glue dissolves in water. So if I'm using this and I wipe it up and it gets into here and it's all dissolved and I'm wiping, I'm just spreading a like incredibly thin layer of glue all over the top. So that's not such a good idea. So once it's all clamped up, just kind of go over everything around the whole thing with the damp. It's fairly dry out humidity-wise, so the top is drying really quick anyway. So the little bit of water wiping it off isn't going to hurt anything. So I'd say that's pretty good. The clamps are pretty tight. So now I just wait until tomorrow and I'll unclamp it, and we should be pretty good to go. We'll have to clean up some of the glue in the holes, I'm sure, and clean up some of the glue in the slot, because the slot on this bridge went all the way through the bridge right to the top. So I can see there's some glue squeeze out there, but not a huge issue. We can just scrape that out afterwards. So that's it, and now we just wait. I ended up putting an extra clamp on it, the one that was a little too large, and I used a long block. I used this to protect the top from the end of this, and it worked to sort of hold down, you know, another end. So I sort of rearranged and positioned a little bit. So now to take them off. And there's a little slight dent in the sound hole. So, you know, you live and learn. Make sure that there's a little bit of clearance, that the inside of the clamp here isn't hitting the sound hole. I hadn't even thought of that, but whatever. Comes off. It looks pretty good so far. And the last clamp. Like a tiny bit of glue on the top, but a Scotch-Brite pad will just get that off the edge. Yeah, I think when I wiped it against the little foam piece, but no biggie, it'll come right off. So it looks good. There are some marks on the top where I was trying to pry the bridge off, but again, what are you gonna do? You know, it's like I said, you know, not an expensive guitar. I like it, it's pretty neat, but not an expensive guitar. And the alternative to me fixing the bridge was to bring it somewhere and pay, you know, what the guitar, more than the guitar's worth, to have the bridge fixed. When, you know, what I probably could have done is just bought another guitar. If the neck wasn't quite the same, which I noticed when I was at that warehouse working on the Echo guitars, the necks seemed to be a little inconsistent as far as sizes. Some of them were thicker, some of them were thinner, whatever. You know, I could have just bought another guitar, swapped the neck out, and sold the other one with the lifting bridge as a fixer-upper or whatever. Sold them, you know, both separately, whatever. But no biggie. So, you know, like I said, the alternative was to pay a lot to have this fixed, and I think I fixed it. So there's a little bit of glue in the slot, a little bit of squeeze out. I'll remove that with just a X-Acto knife or something. Just chip that out. Maybe not even need to. I'll fit the bridge and see what it looks like. This was underneath the bridge where the holes were, and there's absolutely no glue on it. Let me get the tape out. So I'm guessing there wasn't a whole lot of squeeze out underneath that. Get the other block out. Both pieces of tape on that. The other block here. Piece of tape came out. The newspaper piece that I put in. There is a little drip of glue on the newspaper. I don't know exactly where it dripped out of. I am seeing some glue squeeze out in the holes here. So I will fix that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a drill bit that is about the right size. There's a couple with no glue, it looks like. So I'll try and I'll size it and get it right about the same size. Then I'll take the drill bit, probably just by hand, sort of work the glue out. So I will do that, and then I will string it up, and we'll be back, and we should have a working 12-string Echo Ranger 12. Ranger 12 Vintage reissue. So, hopefully this helps somebody. All fixed. Put the bridge on. Fitted the bridge pins again. And I did have to sort of clean out the holes a little bit. I replaced the actual plastic bridge. The one that was on it was kind of crummy, flimsy, cheap plastic one. So I put, I believe, a Tusk one. I don't know, I had it laying around the house kind of thing. But either way, it's a much more rigid, and when you sort of flick it, it makes like a ping sound instead of just like a thud, you know, like a cheap plastic one does. It really kind of rings a little bit. And so strung it all up, everything's good. I adjusted the bridge height a little bit, so now I have really low action on it, much lower than it was before, because of course, you know, the bridge was lifting up, so that wasn't helping any. I didn't even have to adjust the truss rod or anything, or at least not yet. I took the neck off and took a look. There was a little shim already in there, and I just replaced it with a slightly thicker shim to give a little more of a neck angle, and it worked out great. It worked out perfect. Kind of an interesting thing that I discovered. The whole guitar has sort of like a matte finish on it, and the neck feels great with the matte finish. Underneath the neck attachment plate, perfect outline where it's a high gloss. Then when I took the neck off, the sides and the back of the neck here were all high gloss also. It's kind of odd. I don't know if this was finished with a high gloss and then sort of buffed down to a matte or whatever. But, you know, kind of an odd little thing. So anyway, it's all hooked up, and a little out of tune. It keeps going out because it's new strings, and the strings have been off it now for like a week and a half or something. And to keep the bridge from lifting any further, I had loosened the strings a ton to begin with. So there's really been no string pressure on the neck for quite some time. So I'm sure the neck is slowly starting to settle in a little bit. But, you know, a little out of tune. And I've already tuned it like 11 times just today. So, all fixed, all put together, and I think it was a job well done. So hopefully this took a little of the mystery out of replacing a bridge that's lifting off of an acoustic guitar. So it's something that I did by myself at home with a minimal amount of tools, and it's something that definitely you can do with a minimal amount of tools. So hopefully it helped. Thanks for watching.